Today is what?
I'm talking.
I know, I'm just saying. Today is what? The 13th of...
October 2019.
We're sitting here with Oliver.
Hello.
Sitting here with me.
Okay, let me start.
Go for it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Today is October 13. I would say 12 o'clock. No, 12:30. Presently, I have my son here, Peter, my grandson, Oliver, and let's me talk about my family. Okay? First of all, I want to tell you, and I don't want you to get in shock, but my family came from a very Orthodox family. My grandparents on my mother's side, my father's side, they were both Orthodox. Religion was very important to the family. My father, every morning, was davening in Talis and Tefillin until he became sick. Okay, let me talk to you about my grandparents. On my mother's side was the Friedman family. My grandfather was a hussar.
What's that?
Hussar means World War II, when Kaiser Franz Joseph was the monarch of Hungary and Austria.
Yep.
And there was a section of the army where they called them hussar, and mostly ceremonial people. Lovas katona. You know what's a lovas katona?
Lovash katana. Lovash is horse.
A
horse soldier. Lo is horse. Remember that word lo I used? Or Lars Bond used? Anyway, go ahead.
Lovas katona.
Yeah.
My grandfather had a fancy uniform, like the Queen has a special similar thing. It's mostly ceremonial, but he was in World War II, I don't know how many. After that...
Wait, World War II or World War
World
I?
War One.
One, right.
After that, he became...
He was in World War I with Hungary?
What?
He was representing Hungary in World War I?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he became a salesman for the Singer company. The Singer company was selling sewing machines.
This was your grandfather?
That's my grandfather.
He was a salesman for Singer.
He was a salesman for Singer.
What year was this roughly, you think?
When was he born? I can tell you those details later. Okay, my grandmother's name was came from the Lawrence family.
What? That's mom's name.
No, that's the same family. And they came from Romania. Actually, that time was Hungary, Nagyvárad. Nagyvárad is still there, but they have different Romanian name, no. Her name was Lőrinc Regina.
Regina.
As a matter of fact, Viola's daughter is named after my grandmother. My father's side, his name was Hegyi Marton. Martin Hegyi.
That was your
My father's father.
father's father was Martin Hegyi.
And the wife name came from, I remember 5 minutes ago, came from the family of, anyway, I will tell you later.
Okay.
Actually, my grandmother was related to Helen Hegyi's family. That's was the relationship. And they lived in Beregszáz. That time, Beregszáz was Hungary. Now it
The name of
became,
the town was called Berekszház.
yeah. My grandfather was a merchant. He was selling all kind of, he went from town to town and sell with the horse and the buggy, because that time wasn't any car, so with horse and buggy. In the winter time, they used the sled and the horse.
You mean like a sled?
Yeah, in the snow. In the snow, you cannot go in a wheel, so you use the sled. Okay, that's the family. My father had a few brothers named Ignaz. He was the oldest. There was another one named Harry. His name was Yassel. I don't know what was the Hebrew name. When he became in America, he became Harry.
Oh, so back then it wasn't Harry.
No.
When
My father's name was Strolber.
that's my name is Strolber.
Yes, Hirsch, because everybody was called by the Jewish name in that time. They don't, So my father was Strolber.
You mean in Hungary at that time?
Yeah,
This was what? When was your father born? Do you know?
1903.
He was born 1903.
That's right.
He was the youngest or the oldest?
No, he was the middle.
He was the middle.
Ah,
So you're saying in the late 1800s
yes.
in Hungary, people didn't have American names. They had because you were Orthodox, right?
They don't have name. They've been called by the Jewish name. Like you go in Israel, they call you to the whatever your Israel name, not English name. Not
So
called
this was so your uncles were all born in the late 1800s.
Yeah. The oldest was Ignaz, which was, I think Yitzhak was his name. They called we called it Nazi Bashi.
Nazi?
Nazi. Ignaz is
Well, back then, the Nazis weren't.
no,
the
that
Nazis.
was a different era then. Yeah. After that came Harry, which I don't know the Jewish name. After he came Imre. Imre Bachi, my uncle, Imre, was a big man. The rest of them normal size, but uncle. And after that came Jenő, Tommy's father.
Henry.
He wasn't Henry, that Jenő
Henry
was
is the Hungarian name.
Hungarian.
So we named Henry after Tom's father. I didn't realize that until after we named him Henry Heggie.
And there was two girls in between.
You had two aunts?
Yes. One of them was an old maid,
Never got married.
never got married. Her name was, it will come to me. And there was a younger girl, Helen, who is Janshi's mother.
Who's Janshi?
So I have a cousin. Liner married Hegyi Helen, who, the story why I was angry with Janshi, I will tell you one more day.
Is Janshi still alive?
Janshi is still alive
Where does he live?
in Budapest.
So you have a cousin.
Yeah.
Your aunt's son
And so
lives in Budapest. How old is he now?
I would say on 70, 75,
When was the last time you saw him?
10 years ago.
You don't talk to him anymore?
If I have something. Tommy was looking for it, he couldn't find it. Anyway,
So he's a cousin to you, like Tom's a cousin to you.
right.
So Henry Heggie's son is Tom, which is his uncle's son, is Tom Heggie. And this other, what's his name?
That's right.
Yeah.
And on the mother's side, she had two sisters.
On your mother's side,
On my mother's side,
Friedman.
Friedman Jacob Friedman was his name.
Who was that?
My grandfather.
Your mother's father.
My mother, father is my grandfather.
Yeah.
Your dead grandfather.
Yeah.
Whatever. And your
Great, great.
great grandfather. So we're going back into a long time. The Friedmans came from Nagyvárad.
Nagyvárad is where?
Nagyvárad in Hungary was border of Debrecen, not too far from Debrecen. We still go there and sometimes visit it. Anyway, on my mother's side, the Friedman side, there was an older sister, which is Ilonka.
Ilonka.
Ilonka married Saffron,
Saffron.
Tibi's father.
You know Tibi in Canada, right? Tibi's
Pityu,
father.
Tibi and Pityu. Steve was Tibi's older brother who just passed recently, a year ago. The Saffron all came from somewhere, Bukovina. He was first of all, he was very religious. Second of all, I think he was Sephardic. I'm not sure, but I think he was Sephardic.
The Saffrons.
Sephardic is people who were born in like Portugal, like
They come from like the Mediterranean area.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The diaspora had people go out to
I
different
want to
parts.
tell you something.
We're Ashkenazi because his family's from.
We're not
here.
Ashkenazis.
You're not?
No.
Why?
We are, no. We'll come to me.
It's either Ashkenazi or Sephardic, right?
That became neologue. Neologue,
Neologues?
yeah. What we will call in 1920, around 1920, the Hungarian Jews wanted to be separated. Didn't want to be Orthodox, didn't want to be neologue, called, it will come to me. Anyway, so the Jews became Statescu. Statescu means Stat as a name at name. It's a
Name is what?
German.
German.
It's a German word. Stadt, state.
State.
State of Statescu. Anyway, so if you're looking at the Hungaries who came from Hungary, they were not Neorok, they were either Orthodox or Statescu.
Okay, that's a local. That was the local name.
Not the local name. That's what the temple was Statescu.
Okay.
Then it didn't call the Neolog, it called the Orthodox temple or a Statescu temple.
Yeah, but the Jews nowadays are either Sephardic or Ashkenazi. They sort of come from those two areas.
The Hungarian Jews
Yeah.
were Statescu.
Okay.
And they are now. As a matter of fact, I didn't know until Hunyadi explained it, what happened to 1920 or something. They wanted to be separated because they were a lot of fight.
Well, the Hungarian Jews, there's a lot of history around the Hungarian Jews. We can talk about that later.
Okay.
Let's go back to your grandmother. Your mother's,
My mother
Your mother's
has
family's
two
freedmen.
sisters, Ilonka.
yeah,
Ilonka married Saffron,
which is Tibi's
Tibi's father.
father. Yeah.
A younger daughter, name was Olga,
Olga's your other sister, your mother's other sister.
Zsuzsi's mother,
Bobala married Bobala.
married Bobela, and a daughter named Viola.
Okay. So Viola lives in Budapest.
And Viola has a daughter named
Regina.
Regina.
Okay. So the Friedman, Margit Friedman, your mother, had two sisters.
Correct. No, I don't know when they moved from Nagyvárad to Debrecen
Who moved from Nagyvárad to Debrecen?
as Friedmans
Before they met your father.
before
Before they met your father.
my father.
Before your mother met your father, you're saying.
I don't know because you're tech.
You're describing before.
Yeah,
before.
I don't know when they moved to Nagyvárad to Debrecen and Debrecen to Budapest. because finally the Friedmans and the Safrans were leaving Király utca 13.
So when we go to Hungary, Király utca, which is King Street,
13.
13. That's where you grew up?
No.
That's where they lived.
The Safran lived there. The Friedmans live Király utca 25,
Király utca, King Street,
25,
is 25.
which is, one was here, one was here. The famous Király utca 13 was called the Gosdú udvar. The Gosdú udvar means they had 7 buildings, or 8, I don't know how many buildings, and went from one street to other street. So you can go through Király utca to Dob utca, Dobstrasse.
Utca means street in Hungarian.
The street is all, the Dob utca was a good Jewish neighborhood.
Dob utca was a Jewish neighborhood?
Yeah, they had the Jewish brother, they had the Jewish temple, and that's fine.
This is in Debrecen. Oh, this is in Budapest. Budapest.
Debrecen, my father was a merchant. What he was selling, food or what, I don't know. I know one thing, that he went he had a horse and buggy, and he went to town and sold the merchandise.
In what town?
All over in that area.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
I was just asking if I can eat while you're talking.
Yeah.
So keep going.
The merchant in that time, who went from town to town, it's the following thing was, they had a
Keep
street.
talking. I'm going to get a couple things. Keep talking. We're recording. Keep going. Listen.
Come back on the
No, go ahead. I'll just listen. I just want to get mats.
What do you want?
I'm going to get a couple mats here. Go ahead. Keep going.
Kapott, man? Oh, okay.
Keep going.
That's on the table.
Keep going.
Okay. That time, for instance, my grandmother died very young.
Your grandmother died very young.
Yeah. Not only that they very died, my grandfather remarried.
This is who? This is your, which
Márton Hegyi.
Which is your father's father?
The father's father was remarried because, don't forget, it was 8. My father, Imre, Nazi, I think he had eight children, if I'm correct.
Who did?
My grandfather.
Your father's father had about 8 children?
Yeah,
Your father was one of 8?
I think so. Look at this. Ignác was the oldest. Came utána Imre, Hari, Hari után came Jenő, Jenő után jön one of girls, and so six children. And who knows how many they lost.
Right.
You don't know. Because that time was very, very. They didn't have movies, so they made babies. That time, it was very popular.
You hear what you said?
Kind of.
I said, that time they didn't have movies, so they made babies. That's the truth. First of
I
all,
believe you.
I don't think that time they have electricity.
Yeah?
So they have kerosene lamps and coal or wood stove for heating. In that time of year, I mean, there was no transportation, horse and buggy. This was a different life, I'm sure they went to bed when dark because it's cold came, they get up very early.
You know, the automobile, the first Model T Ford was what, 1905? Oliver? When did the first car come out? Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. Streetcar came in the 1930s or sometime,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
So the only transportation was fiacre. You know what's a fiacre?
No.
Fiacre is still in New York when you go to a horse and carriage. What do you call it?
Horse and buggy.
Horse and buggy,
Yeah.
okay. So if you wanted to go somewhere, my father's wife family was in that business. You call that Chaim Schwartz, or yeah.
So just getting back to just summarizing what you got so far. You got your parents, your mother's family was freedmen. They lived where in Budapest? Király utca?
No. My mother's family came from Romania, Nagyvárad,
Which is Hungary, but
was Hungary that time. Moved into Debrecen,
yeah.
and I don't know what year they moved from Debrecen to Budapest. But finally, they lived in Budapest.
Okay. And your father's family,
My father's family, everybody lived in Debrecen.
your father's family lived in Debrecen?
Yeah. My father's cousin was Jenő Szabados. I don't know if you heard the name.
Yeah.
His original name was Silberstein,
Okay.
and he had his mother in Debrecen. The father died. Has a sister and a brother, and their family. They all lived in Debrecen.
So your father's family all lived in Debrecen. When did they move to Budapest?
After we came back from the deportage.
Oh, okay.
So,
So your mother and your father met in Debrecen?
I guess so. Because I was born in Debrecen.
You were born in Debrecen?
I was born in Debrecen in a hospital, and I don't remember what I was told. It was February 25th. It was so much snow that they had to call a horse and buggy with the sled.
It was 1934.
1934.
Hold on, before we go into your birth, I just want to make sure I understand. Your parents met?
My parents met in Debrecen.
Do you know when?
I figured it out. If I was born in 34 and they married 3 years before.
So they married in 1931?
31, yeah.
In Debrecen they got married.
Yeah. Okay. My father was a merchant, but he was selling clothing. And his business was, that time they had trucks. And they 2 or 3 of them hired a truck. And in Hungary, every week in one town, there was a fair.
A fair?
Fair. And because there was no stores that time.
Uh-huh.
And what happened is, my father get his stuff into that truck. Another guy put his truck. So he was selling clothing, mostly for the peasants.
Your father.
And you know what was the name of the most popular merchant? What he sold? Zeig.
What?
Zeig.
What?
The material was Zeig. You know what was Zeig?
No.
Blue jean.
They made blue jeans back then?
The
In the late 20s?
the blue jean is originated from Hungary.
Really?
Yeah. He came a Strauss,
Levi Strauss?
Levi Strauss, who was a Hungarian,
It was?
and brought the blue jean. But Hungarian peasants were working in a pants and a jacket, and that's all. And my father was selling finished goods. And you know how he was selling for measurements. You know how they measured? Well, in a truck, they took a pult, a table with them. And when the peasant guy, a paraszjött, tudod?
That's a peasant, yeah. That's a
Hey,
peasant in
he
Hungary.
wanted to have what do you call it, clothing, custom clothing.
Yeah,
They put him on a table,
yeah.
they put a piece of newspaper around it,
Yeah.
and they take a pencil and went around the pencil. That was the custom made. What,
They
yeah?
laid the guy on a table and they traced around him.
Yeah.
And so they made custom clothing like
And not only that, but when the clothing was, because every 3 months or 2 months or 3 weeks, I thought, they went back to the same town, you know? So my father, when I was born, he was traveling with this guy for a week. They didn't come home. They come home for Shabbos.
All right, so let's transition to your birth. Anything else you want to talk about relative to your family before you were born?
Before I was born,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't there.
Okay, you're good. I'm gonna pause this right now. We're gonna go to the next section.